So I've wanted to talk about Lord of the Rings for quite some time now, but what do you really talk about when it's one of the greatest stories and movie trilogies of all time? The one that popularized the entire fantasy genre and has been talked about over and over again from various topics. There's not a lot of new info being put out there, but I do have some random thoughts that I thought would be fun to share. And what triggered all this was recently while watching Lord of the Rings again. There is one scene in Return of the King which has always been imprinted in my brain since I first watched it. And it's this scene right here.
Home is behind, the world ahead.
It's a powerful scene that is exemplary in its use of juxtaposition, contrasting the comforts of Denethor while sending his own son to death. All the while, Pippin sings a very haunting rendition of Tolkien's A Walking Song, a song that is meant to be about adventure, but has also been interpreted about the journey to death. So, fitting. None of that, though, is why I remember this scene. The reason why I remember this scene is because of this red stuff that is running down Denethor's mouth. And I always wondered, what is this? Is it blood? Because who eats that violently that they start hemorrhaging at the mouth? It could also be tomato juice, but the fresh juice that comes out of a single tomato is not that red. And after looking online, there really is no answer to this question. What is more important, though, is what it symbolizes. The blood that is needlessly spilt of Faramir and his men. Denethor is literally losing his own flesh and blood, while sending his own flesh and blood to death. And so I was a little disappointed to find out that this scene wasn't actually in the book. The film interpretation gives Denethor this cowardly and gluttonous demeanor to him.
Abandon your post! Flee! Flee for your life!
In the novel, Faramir doesn't get sent to retake Osgiliath, but rather he gets wounded defending it. Denethor doesn't actually despise Faramir, but he just prefers Boromir to him. Film Denethor is actually more of a caricature to his counterpart in the novels. Peter Jackson's interpretation, although not 100% faithful, I think is actually more dramatically impactful. I think his treatment of Denethor actually says something about the qualities of the race of men, a race that is easily corrupted by their hunger for power, a race that is struggling to stay unified in goal and purpose.
Theoden's betrayed me.
Denethor is their living embodiment. As their leader, he represents their weaknesses and struggles. Denethor too struggles with power in that he is a steward, but he will never become king. Greed and gluttony, much like how it affects the other races of Middle-earth, too affect the world of men, and Denethor shows this. And I think representing Denethor in this way serves the story better, dramatically and thematically.
Fate.
This scene got me thinking about the themes of consumption and how consumption is treated differently among the races of Middle-earth, as well as the lore and symbolism behind the food of Lord of the Rings. Not being an avid reader of the books, I deferred a lot of my research to online articles and the fandom wiki. Again, a lot of this is not necessarily new information, but it is from a different perspective. So I hope you find it interesting nonetheless. Of course, you can't really talk about the food of Lord of the Rings without first talking about hobbits. You can't talk about Lord of the Rings in general without talking about hobbits.
I can make you some eggs if you like.
Just tea, thank you.
Oh, right. You don't want to follow.
Hobbits are highly distinctive in that their food culture is the most sophisticated among the races of Middle-earth. The Hobbits are written to have this deeper relationship with what they eat.
And then we sow in the summer barley in the lower fields, and eat in the first of the strawberries with cream.
we get a deeper sense of the rituals and practices that hobbits have when it comes to food. For example, hobbits have 6 meals a day, 7 according to the movies.
We've had one, yes. What about second breakfast?
And they garden and only eat simple, fresh, locally grown food such as breads, cheese, fruits, meats, and ale and wine. To hobbits, food really means home. It's why Sam brings salt from the Shire, and it's so important that he does not lose it.
It's very special, that.
It is special. It's a little bit of home.
It's why when Frodo and Sam stop to take a break and eat at the beginning of Two Towers, the Shire theme plays.
I don't usually hold with foreign food, but this other stuff, it's not bad.
As the story continues, the memory of home, the memory of the Shire slowly fades. And that's not because they don't remember it exists, but because of all the tangible things that are associated with it. The feel of grass, the sound of wind, the taste of food are all slowly fading in their memory.
Do you remember the taste of strawberries?
What makes hobbits different from dwarves or orcs who consume with reckless abandon is that hobbits spend most of their lives tending to things that grow. There's a sense of cyclicality and renewal to hobbits. They give back what they take from the earth, doing things like agriculture, tending to plants, literally building their homes close to the earth, are all key parts of being a hobbit. It is evident that Tolkien, much like the hobbits he writes, has a love for the natural world. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Sam, one of the most important characters in the story, is Frodo's gardener. And so this lifestyle of tending to things that grow, agriculture, gardening, makes food represent a key piece of the home they come from. Food is more than just sustenance. It's culture and identity. I also thought it would be interesting to explore the lore and origins surrounding some of the other food in Middle-earth. A lot of the food in Middle-earth has roots in medieval society, and it's no coincidence because Tolkien was a professor in Anglo-Saxon at the time he wrote The Hobbit and the first 2 books of Lord of the Rings. Lembas, or whey bread, is probably the most prominent food item in Lord of the Rings. Tolkien's inspiration likely came from multiple different sources, such as hardtack, which was a biscuit-like food which was used for long journeys or war, and it wouldn't spoil. There was also lammas bread, which was a type of bread that was blessed during the beginning of the harvest. So naturally, something like this could also be the reason why evil creatures such as Gollum were repulsed by it.
No, not poor Smeagol. Smeagol hates nasty elf bread.
Lembas's nutritional properties also may have taken inspiration from the writings of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who wrote about an herb that allowed people to go 12 days straight without consuming food.
1 small bite is enough to fill the stomach of a grown man.
How many did you eat?
4.
There are other biscuit-like foods in the Tolkien-verse, such as Cram, which we don't really see in the films. Cram, however, is less nutritious and more bland compared to Lembas. Cram is actually man-made, while Lembas is of elvish origin. Which brings me to the thought I had. We actually do see differences in food and food culture when it comes to the different races in Middle-earth. Although none are as sophisticated as Hobbit food culture, they do have a typified manner in which they consume food. Elvish food is generally more fortified, nutritious, and effective. Elves don't consume very much, just what is necessary. Elves are depicted as this epitome of perfection, and therefore it makes sense that Lembas is an integral part of their food culture. While man-made food is generally less nutritious and effective, humans are depicted as being far from perfect, unlike elves. There is great disparity among the class types. There are those who eat less nutritious food and starve, while there are those who are well off and wealthy who overconsume. Now, if we look at dwarves, they have this indulgent food culture, as I mentioned earlier. They overconsume, and it's not in just food, but they have this greed in everything that they find valuable.
Soon, Master Elf, you will enjoy the fabled hospitality of the dwarves. Roaring fires, malt beer, red meat off the bone.
It fits with their culture.
You fear to go into those mines. The dwarves delve too greedily and too deep.
And then you have orcs, who also have a food culture.
Just a mouthful.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boy.
With orcs, they are just built to violently consume, almost like zombies.
You do not know pain, you do not know fear. You will taste man flesh!
Evil archetypes in Tolkien's world are meant to consume raw flesh. So if you eat raw meat in a Tolkien story, you are generally the bad guy.
To us.
In the end, my point is, if you're building a fantasy world, you're creating different cultures with different traditions and practices that rival life. So it's important to give thought to how characters consume, what it means to consume, and why. Tolkien and Peter Jackson did just that with the stories that they were trying to tell. Food is one of the ways we can share a little piece of ourselves with others. It's a way to pass on tradition and culture. And then there's something to be said about food in fantasy, in that it can connect the story world to that of the real world, because food in fantasy, food in stories, can go simply beyond just watching or reading. People can recreate recipes, people can taste food. So in essence, food is a way to experience another world in a deeper, more meaningful way. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, hope this video wasn't too rambly and I hope you found something interesting from it. I have been sitting on this video for a long time now because I had rewatched Lord of the Rings, and I had to find a way to talk about that one scene with Denethor. I just had to. Anyways, let me know if there are any other video suggestions that you want me to talk about. I do take account all of them. It's just a process. It takes time for me to get ideas, to watch content, but I do note them all down. And also let me know if there's anything I missed in this video that you want to mention. If there's something I got wrong, let me know. And don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.